Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. As with most adaptations, the Harry Potter films couldn't avoid simplifications, omissions, and deviations from the original text. Starting with the third installment, the sheer size of the books posed a difficult challenge for screenwriters: what to keep and what to cut. Unfortunately, some of these choices were not just controversial, but actively damaged the logical and emotional fabric of the story. In this piece, we examine the most unfortunate moments when the magic of the books was lost in translation to the screen. Number 1. Wormtail's fate, the traitor's unfinished arc. In the books, Peter Pettigrew's fate was symbolically powerful. The man who had betrayed Harry's parents, and who had once been spared by Harry himself, became magically bound to him by a life debt. At the pivotal moment when he attempted to strangle Harry, this ancient magical obligation intervened, and the enchanted hand gifted to him by Voldemort turned on its master. This act brought closure to Wormtail's tragic arc, showing that even a traitor might not be beyond redemption. In the film, however, this was entirely discarded. The character was merely stunned and then vanished from the story altogether. A storyline with deep dramatic potential was left unresolved. Number 2. The Quidditch World Cup, the match that wasn't. In The Goblet of Fire, the book opens with a vibrant, thrilling event, the Quidditch World Cup, meant to be one of the most dazzling spectacles of the early chapters. Featuring the world's top players, it was described with such vivid energy that readers felt as though they were sitting in the stadium themselves. But in the film, the audience was denied this excitement. Only the build-up and aftermath of the match were shown. The game itself was entirely omitted. This decision not only disappointed fans, but also robbed the narrative of a powerful emotional kickoff that could have set the tone for everything that followed. Number 3. Harry and Cho's breakup, a simplified drama. Harry Potter's relationship with Cho Chang unfolded gradually in the book. In the Order of the Phoenix, they began dating, but it soon became clear that their personalities and social circles were too different. One key reason for their breakup was a betrayal by Cho's friend Marietta Edgecombe, who exposed Dumbledore's army. Though Cho herself hadn't betrayed anyone, Harry couldn't overlook the breach of trust. Their relationship faded amid growing tension. In the film, however, Cho is the one who directly informs on the group, supposedly under the influence of Veritaserum. This stripped her of any complex motivation and robbed Harry of emotional depth. The breakup came off as abrupt, one-sided, and weakly justified. Number 4. Barty Crouch, a villain left in the shadows. The central mystery in The Goblet of Fire revolved around the unknown figure who placed Harry's name in the goblet. When it was revealed that Barty Crouch Jr. had been impersonating Mad-Eye Moody all year, the story turned dark and sinister. But the film cut or heavily abbreviated critical details. Barty's escape from Azkaban, his manipulation of his father, and his transformation into Moody were largely absent. The audience missed the full scale of the deception and the tragic complexity of his character. Without these layers, Barty became just another villain rather than a shattered soul shaped by family, ideology, and control. Number 5. The Burrow attack, a scene for the sake of drama. In the 6th film, a scene appeared that never existed in the book, a Death Eater attack on the Weasley home. Clearly added to heighten tension and visually demonstrate the growing threat, the scene nonetheless raises many questions. Why were there so few attackers? Why was it a one-time assault with no follow-up? And why wasn't Voldemort involved if the danger was so grave? In the book, this segment of the story instead focused on a significant meeting between Harry and the Minister of Magic, revealing the political stakes. The filmmakers chose to replace this with a flashy confrontation that ultimately did nothing to advance the plot. Number 6. The Marauders' backstory was almost completely ignored. The Marauders were more than names on a map. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew were the heartbeat of an older Hogwarts. Their friendship, fierce and flawed, shaped everything that came after. They weren't just pranksters, they were brothers. They learned animagus magic in secret to keep Remus company during his werewolf transformations. They did not care that he was a werewolf, Lupin tells Harry. They were the best friends I ever had. And then one of them betrayed them all. The film never tells us this. We hear the word Marauder, we see the map, but the soul behind it? Lost. No late-night transformations, no moonlit loyalty, no years of secrets between four boys who thought they'd be friends forever. Pettigrew's betrayal in the Shrieking Shack should feel like a knife. Instead, it's just another twist. Viewers who haven't read the books never learn what Peter threw away, or what James and Sirius lost. Without their story, the tragedy of Harry's past is flatter. Lupin and Sirius don't feel like echoes of his father because we never see the bond that once united them. When Lupin dies, when Sirius falls through the veil, we miss the weight of it. The Marauder's tale is one of love, loyalty, and ruin. The film left it in the shadows, and with it, some of the most human magic in the series. Number 7, Winky and the House-elf storyline were entirely cut. Winky wasn't just another house-elf, she was a witness, a key to the mystery of the Goblet of Fire. She served the Crouch family, loyal, nervous, and terrified. It was Winky who hid Barty Crouch Jr. after his escape from Azkaban. She was at the Quidditch World Cup when the Dark Mark appeared, found unconscious with Harry's wand. Her shame and silence gave readers a deeper look into how magic, loyalty, and abuse twisted together behind closed doors. "Winky is a good elf," she sobbed, clinging to a lie too heavy to hold. But in the film, Winky is gone, erased, and with her the entire subplot of house-elf servitude and moral complexity disappears. The audience never sees Barty Crouch Sr. as a man who kept his son hidden and enslaved an elf to do it. They miss the heartbreaking contrast between Dobby, who fought for freedom, and Winky, who begged to stay chained. Without this, Crouch Jr., his backstory feels thin. His reappearance is more plot twist than tragedy. Winky's absence also silences a larger theme, the quiet cruelty in the wizarding world. In the book, Hermione notices it, founds SPEW to fight it. It's not just about elves, it's about justice, about how even heroes like Crouch Sr. and Dumbledore overlook the voiceless. The film's silence on this erases an entire layer of the world, a world where magic doesn't always mean freedom. Number 8. The final conversation between Harry and Voldemort was missing from the film. The last stand between Harry and Voldemort in the book doesn't happen in shadows, it happens in the Great Hall, in front of everyone. The wounded, the fighters, the survivors. Harry steps forward, not to curse, but to speak. He tells Voldemort why the Elder Wand won't obey him. He calls him Tom. He strips him of fear, of mystery. "Try for some remorse, Riddle," Harry says, and his voice cuts through the silence. It's not just a duel, it's a reckoning, but the film chooses a chase. They fly through the castle, grapple mid-air, vanish over ledges, no witnesses, no explanation. When Voldemort dies, he drifts into ash, alone. The moment becomes spectacle, not truth. There's no recognition of why he lost, no public collapse of the myth he built. In the book, his body hits the ground with a finality that stuns the room. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality, Rowling writes. His body lay spread-eagled, ordinary and unremarkable. That ordinariness is the point. Evil wasn't a god, it was a man broken by his own fear. In the book, Harry wins by showing everyone, and Voldemort himself, that love, loyalty, and understanding magic better than anyone else is what truly defeated him. The film robs us of that. It shows Voldemort vanish. But his disappearance isn't what mattered. His fall was supposed to be seen. Number 9. Snape's memories of Lily Potter were insufficiently explored. Snape's memories should have broken us. In Deathly Hallows, they are the key that unlocks his entire soul. We see a boy meeting Lily Evans under the trees, a boy who didn't fit in, who loved her deeply and lost her to the very man he hated most. "Always," he said, and it wasn't just a word, it was a lifetime. He begged Dumbledore to protect her. He switched sides for her. He died for her son. But the film rushes it. The prince's tale, at the emotional core of the final book, becomes a montage. Fast cuts, fleeting images. The scene where Snape finds Lily's lifeless body sobbing on the floor of Godric's Hollow is there. But the rest? Reduced? Their childhood friendship? Barely shown? His slow descent into regret? Skimmed? The heartbreak is muted. There's no sense of how much he truly lost or how long he carried it. Alan Rickman gave us pain in every glance, but the script didn't give him enough space. In the book, when Dumbledore asks, "After all this time?" and Snape answers, "Always," you feel the weight of decades. In the film, it's just a beat. And then it's gone. That line should have echoed. It should have lingered, because that single word is the saddest love story the wizarding world ever told. Number 10, the complete disappearance of Charlie Weasley. Charlie Weasley was a ghost in the films. Not the magical kind, the forgotten kind. In the books, he's the second oldest Weasley brother, a dragon tamer, a rebel. He's the one Hagrid writes to when they need to smuggle Norbert out of the castle. He's the one who helps bring foreign dragons for the Triwizard Tournament. In Deathly Hallows, he returns to fight in the Battle of Hogwarts. He's not just background, he's blood. But on screen, he's nothing. Charlie never shows up, not once. Not even at Bill and Fleur's wedding, where his absence is painfully obvious. In the book, the entire Weasley family is present, including Charlie, described as broad, with a sunburned face and strong arms like Fred and George. His laugh, his rough charm, his presence, all cut. What's lost is more than just a name. Charlie gave the Weasley family texture. He wasn't a ministry worker like Percy, or a prankster like Fred and George. He was out in the world, wild, brave, different. His connection with dragons made the magical world feel bigger. When the family gathered, his stories brought Romania into the Burrow. Without him, the Weasleys feel smaller, incomplete. There's a scene in the books when Mrs. Weasley hugs Charlie tight and says, "You've come back to us." That moment of love, that fleeting, beautiful reunion, never happened in the films. And it should have, because Charlie was proof that being a hero didn't always mean standing in the spotlight. Sometimes it meant flying with dragons and coming home when it mattered most. Number 11. Strange changes to Ginny Weasley's character. Book Ginny was fire. She hexed boys who mocked her. She stood up to Ron, to Malfoy, even to Harry. In Order of the Phoenix, she becomes a core part of Dumbledore's army, fighting beside the others without hesitation. "You sort of start thinking anything's possible if you've got enough nerve," she said with a grin, and meant it. She wasn't just the youngest Weasley, she was a force. But film Ginny is a shadow of that girl, quiet, hesitant. She speaks in half sentences, stands in doorways, and fades into the background. In Half-Blood Prince, when she bends down to tie Harry's shoelace, in total silence, it's not love, it's awkward. Gone is the witty, confident girl who dated other boys, played Quidditch fiercely and made Harry want to be around her. The on-screen romance just happens, without the spark that made their connection in the book so earned and real. The change hurts more because Book Ginny had one of the strongest arcs, from a shy, cursed 11-year-old to a fearless young woman who breaks into the ministry and fights in the Battle of Hogwarts. She even survives it all. "The thing about growing up with Fred and George," she once told Harry, "is that you sort of start thinking anything's possible." That spirit, that sharp, vivid light, never made it to the screen. By softening her, the films made Harry's choice feel strange. Why her? What did he see in this quiet girl who barely spoke? The truth is, he saw something we didn't, because it wasn't there. It was in the books, in the girl who cursed Zachariah Smith without blinking, who kissed Harry in front of everyone and didn't care. She deserved better. Number 12, complete disregard for Dumbledore's burned glove. When Harry enters Dumbledore's office after the headmaster's death in Half-Blood Prince, he sees something quiet, somber, and deeply human, a blackened, burned glove lying beside the sword of Gryffindor. It's not just a discarded item. It's the glove Dumbledore wore when he destroyed Marvolo Gaunt's cursed ring, a Horcrux, and it's all that remains of the moment when Albus chose to sacrifice himself for the greater good. It was a very advanced curse, Dumbledore had said quietly. I was a fool to think I could destroy it without paying a price. That glove is never mentioned in the film. Not a shot, not a word. The movies erase it, along with the gravity of what Dumbledore did. In the book, that glove tells a story of a man who knew he was dying, who bore the pain silently, and who went on fighting anyway. When Harry notices it, he understands. His mentor was already doomed the night he showed him the memory of the Horcrux, but he never said a word. The glove, scorched and still, says it all. Without it, the film audience never learns about the ring's deadly curse. We're shown the Horcrux, yes, but the terrible price of touching it is never explained. There's no indication that Dumbledore's blackened hand is the result of a near-fatal mistake. We don't hear the fear in his voice. We don't understand that he gave himself a death sentence to save others from that burden. In the book, Harry watches him carefully and thinks he's dying. The glove should have stayed. It's one of the few objects in the series that carries enormous meaning without any magic at all. No light, no spark, no incantation, just silence. It's the symbol of Albus Dumbledore at his most vulnerable, not as the great wizard, but as a man who was brave enough to touch evil with his own hands. Number 13. Forgotten Dursley, Dudley and the Farewell Scene. For 7 long years, Dudley Dursley was a symbol of spoiled cruelty and petty torment. In the cupboard under the stairs, Harry Potter found his first prison, and Dudley was the self-appointed warden, the child who counted his birthday presents and threw tantrums over one less gift, was never meant to be a complex character. Yet J.K. Rowling, with her uncanny instinct for human growth, refused to let even Dudley remain stagnant. And that is precisely why his quiet, powerful scene in Deathly Hallows, the one so heartbreakingly excised from the film, matters more than most remember. The moment came not with fireworks or redemption arcs, but in the early hours of a summer morning. The Dursleys were being evacuated from Privet Drive for their safety. Voldemort had risen, the Ministry had fallen, and even the most oblivious of Muggles could no longer pretend the world was as it had always been. Petunia, Vernon, and Dudley, a family whose fear of magic bordered on pathological, were being sent into hiding, escorted by wizards. But before they left, there was a pause. An unexpected hush fell over the hallway, and that's when it happened. Dudley, the boy who had once punched, mocked, and starved his cousin, stopped and looked at Harry. It wasn't fear or disdain in his eyes. It was something unspoken, tentative, even raw. For the first time in the series, he extended a hand, not to take, but to give, to acknowledge, to say without saying, "I see you." And then came the words that altered everything. "I don't think you're a waste of space." They weren't poetic. They weren't even especially kind. But from Dudley, they were revolutionary. Here was a boy raised in a home where love was conditional and kindness was confused with indulgence. A boy taught by Vernon to sneer at anything different, taught by Petunia to fear anything magical. Dudley had never stood apart from his parents, and yet now, at the 11th hour, he did just that. The scene, nestled quietly in Chapter 3 of Deathly Hallows, has become something of a hidden gem among book fans. It doesn't involve wands or duels, but it is magic in its own right. The magic of forgiveness, of subtle transformation. Harry is stunned. The boy who once led the charge against him is now shaking his hand. It doesn't undo the past, but it acknowledges it. There's grace in that. Harry was stunned. He stared at Dudley as though he had never seen him before, the book reads. It's a simple line, but devastating in its impact. For years, Harry saw Dudley as one of life's certainties, like rain on a funeral. But now, with the world unraveling, Dudley too was changing. And in that change lay hope, not just for Harry, but for the idea that even the worst people can surprise us. The film adaptation, however, gives us none of this. The Dursleys are shown hastily packing into a car. No handshake, no words, just silence and a sense of finality that feels empty rather than earned. The audience is left to assume that the family departs as it arrived, shallow, fearful, unrepentant, a footnote in Harry's story, but that's not the truth the books offered. It's a strange decision when you think about it. Rowling herself has said that Dudley's moment of growth was important. The deleted scene was even filmed. Actor Harry Melling delivered it with unexpected tenderness, but it was cut, trimmed away like an unwanted branch from a growing tree. In doing so, the film sacrificed one of the most human scenes in the series. And this omission matters because the Harry-Dudley farewell isn't about tying up loose ends. It's about growth. It's about the idea that people, even those who seemed irredeemable, can evolve. Dudley isn't asking for forgiveness. He's not pretending things didn't happen. He's simply acknowledging that something has changed, that Harry matters, that Harry is something. This moment casts a long shadow back over the earlier books. Dudley's transformation didn't come from nowhere. It began subtly after the Dementor attack in Order of the Phoenix. That night, Dudley experienced fear. Real, soul-shaking fear. And Harry saved him. Afterwards, something inside the boy cracked open. He didn't have the words for it, but the experience humbled him. It made Harry real to him in a way no birthday or bedtime story ever had. A year later, in Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore arrives at Privet Drive, Dudley does something extraordinary for someone so self-absorbed. He offers Dumbledore a drink. It's a clumsy gesture, and Vernon quickly shuts it down, but it's there. A flicker of change, a hint that Dudley's world had shifted, however slightly. By the time of Deathly Hallows, that shift has turned into something more permanent. He still isn't eloquent. He still can't articulate feelings with any fluency, but he tries. He shows up. And in a family where emotional honesty is considered a weakness, that makes him braver than any dragon-slaying Gryffindor. The tragedy of the scene's removal isn't just that the audience misses a satisfying resolution, it's that Harry's own journey feels less complete. For all the battles he fights and friends he makes, so much of Harry's identity is forged in the crucible of the Dursleys' neglect. His triumph is not just surviving Voldemort, it's surviving Privet Drive. And Dudley's gesture, awkward though it is a kind of validation. It says, "You were right. You deserved better. And I know that now." In a narrative saturated with sweeping heroics, this tiny human moment might seem small. But it's precisely these quiet turns that lend the story its soul. When we talk about the richness of Rowling's world, we don't just mean the spells or the magical beasts. We mean the humanity, the broken families, the repaired relationships, the hope that it's never too late. It also raises a powerful question. How many other Dudleys are out there? People raised in ignorance, taught to hate or fear, who might, if given the chance, choose differently? Dudley shows that redemption doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just a hand extended. Number 14, Dumbledore's funeral was neglected. Of all the cinematic decisions made in the adaptation of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, few feel more glaring or more painful than the omission of Albus Dumbledore's funeral. In J.K. Rowling's original novel, Dumbledore's death is not just a moment of personal grief, it's a seismic emotional event that shakes the very foundations of the wizarding world. His funeral is rich in symbolism, a rare gathering of magical beings across boundaries, and a dramatic statement of unity in the face of encroaching darkness. Yet in the film, this cathartic ceremony is replaced with a brief, stylized scene of raised wands and silent mourning. A beautiful gesture, yes, but one that reduces the gravity of his death to a whisper. The book gives us something deeply human and mythically grand, a funeral beside the Black Lake where hundreds of chairs had been set out in neat rows, and figures from every corner of the magical world came to pay their respects. Among them were not just Hogwarts students and teachers, but beings we barely see elsewhere, merfolk rising from the lake, centaurs appearing at the forest's edge, and even representatives of distant ministries. All came because Dumbledore, for all his complexities and secrets, had meant something to everyone. His passing was not just the end of a man, but the passing of an era. In the words of the novel, there was no more powerful symbol than this: the world had paused to grieve. The visual power of such a scene cannot be overstated. A white tomb gleaming on the lake shore, a haunting choir echoing over the water, Vila in mourning robes, goblins bowing their heads. This was a moment that could have rivaled anything in cinematic fantasy. Instead, we are given a quiet room, a handful of characters, and silence. No centaurs, no mermaids, no lake, no sense of global mourning, no symbol of resistance. And perhaps that is the most jarring absence of all. Because Dumbledore's funeral was not just a farewell, it was a signal to the world. The Death Eaters had struck a blow. Hogwarts, the one place thought safe, had been infiltrated. Yet even then, even as fear thickened the air, the world came together to say, "We remember who stood against the darkness. We will continue that stand." The film denies us this moment. There is no wide shot of the magical world grieving together, no visible line drawn in the sand, just flickering lights and then darkness. The book paints this with tender, painful beauty. Harry watches as the white tomb rises and the realization of his mentor's loss crashes into him fully. Rowling writes, Harry had never attended a funeral before. He could not now recall ever having been to one. That inexperience adds weight to his loss. It is his first real experience with death, not as an abstraction, but as a ritualized public sorrow. The viewer, too, was robbed of that transition. In the film, we never fully see Harry move from shock to resolve through grief. The journey is half told. Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, sings in the book. It is described as a lament of such unearthly beauty that Harry felt tears prickle at the corner of his eyes. That sound, that elegy, could have been a haunting auditory centerpiece in the film. Instead, Fawkes is barely referenced. The very creature that symbolized Dumbledore's soul, his cycle of death and rebirth, is silenced. The phoenix is not seen flying into the sky as the flames consume the old, nor heard as his sorrow fills the air. That silence is not golden, it is a gaping wound. The grandeur of the funeral in the novel lies in more than just who attended, it lies in what it represented. Dumbledore was controversial, sometimes enigmatic, even manipulative, but he was also beloved, respected, and feared by those who sought to destroy him. His death marks the shift from protected childhood to exposed reality. The Hogwarts of old is gone. A funeral is not just a goodbye. It is a line drawn between what was and what now must be. Rowling knew that. The filmmakers, unfortunately, did not. This omission becomes even more puzzling when one considers how visually rich the series had been up to that point. The Triwizard Tournament, the Ministry Battle, even Aragog's funeral all received careful cinematic treatment. Yet Dumbledore, the most important magical figure of the age, gets no funeral, no orchestration of loss, no moment of awe. It feels not just like a missed opportunity, but an act of narrative negligence. The arc of loss and determination, so essential to the climax, is fractured. Many fans recall that moment in the book when Hagrid carries Dumbledore's body, laid out gently, like a sleeping figure, and sobs as he walks across the grounds. Rowling lets us feel it all, the pride, the sorrow, the overwhelming helplessness. In the film, Hagrid is present, but subdued. There is no procession, no shared gasp when the tomb is sealed, no closure. What is most unfortunate is that the choice to erase the funeral undermines the themes the films were otherwise trying to emphasize. The sixth film, in many ways, is about uncertainty, fear, and the beginnings of disillusionment. What better to reinforce those ideas than by allowing characters to confront death directly? The funeral would have granted a breath, grief, and then resolution. Instead, we are denied that breath. We move straight from death to the next task, to the next mission. There's no space for the characters or the viewers to mourn. Rowling spent time building the complexity of Dumbledore's relationships. We see Madame Maxime, the Giants, even characters like Elphias Doge, who wrote a heartfelt obituary for the Daily Prophet. All these characters gave dimension to the man beyond the myth. Their presence at the funeral gives texture. The film's refusal to show them flattens Dumbledore's legacy. He is treated less as a man with history and more as a symbol to be quietly tucked away. Number 15. No explanation for Sirius's mirror. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, a fragment of enchanted glass offers Harry a mysterious glimpse of salvation. A blue eye peers out, watching, waiting. Later, this eye will lead to a rescue, an intervention that saves Harry and his friends from certain death. But for viewers of the film alone, this moment is barely a whisper. It drifts by, unexplained and unanchored, a haunting image with no root in understanding. The story of Sirius Black's mirror, its origin, its connection to Aberforth Dumbledore, and its pivotal role in Harry's escape from Malfoy Manor, is conspicuously absent from the cinematic adaptation. To fans unfamiliar with the books, the scene might appear poetic, perhaps even touching, but it is devoid of logic. It is one of the clearest examples of how the film sacrifices emotional clarity and narrative sense by omitting key backstory. In the fifth book, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Sirius gives Harry a wrapped package as the boy prepares to return to Hogwarts. Harry only opens it after Sirius's death. Inside he finds a small square mirror in a shabby leather case. A note from Sirius accompanies the mirror, explaining, "This is a two-way mirror. I've got the other one of the pair. If you need to speak to me, just say my name into it. You'll appear in my mirror, and I'll be able to talk in yours." Harry, filled with grief and regret, shoves the mirror into his trunk and forgets it. This is not a throwaway moment. This is Sirius's last gift, his desperate attempt to remain a part of Harry's life, to keep him safe from afar. The mirror's presence is soaked in tragedy. It could have saved Sirius had Harry used it in time, but he never did. This emotional weight makes the mirror more than a magical object. It becomes a symbol of missed chances and the cost of impulsive decisions. When Harry later rediscovers a shard of it in Deathly Hallows, it is not just a coincidence. It's a moment heavy with sorrow, a tangible piece of the past. He pulled out the shard of mirror he had taken from the old dresser in the bedroom at number 12. Grimmauld Place, Rowling writes. It glimmers like a memory, sharp and full of ghosts. The fact that this single sliver of glass can still call forth an image, an eye, suggests its power is not broken, merely reduced. But who does the eye belong to? Not Sirius, as Harry first believes. It is Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus's reclusive younger brother. In the book, Rowling gives time to explain the mirror's reappearance and Aberforth's connection to it. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione are trapped in the cellar of Malfoy Manor, injured and surrounded by enemies, Dobby appears. "I've been watching you," Aberforth later explains, revealing himself as the one behind the mirror shard. He had been watching through the twin mirror, inherited after Sirius's death. It was Aberforth who sent Dobby to rescue them. This revelation adds layers to the Dumbledore mythos, to the network of secret protection surrounding Harry, and to the legacy of Sirius's love. The film erases all of this. There is no mention of the original mirror, no package from Sirius, no two-way connection, no reason for Harry to have that shard in the first place. And so when Harry looks into the piece of glass in the movie and sees a blue eye staring back, the moment is surreal and disconnected. It is visually striking. Daniel Radcliffe plays it with quiet wonder, but it is meaningless without context. Who is the old man? Why is he watching Harry? Why does Harry trust the image enough to call for help in a desperate moment? None of these questions are answered. The viewer is left only with confusion. This oversight robs the story of its emotional arc. In the books, Harry's trust in the mirror, despite not knowing who is behind it, is rooted in his connection to Sirius. That connection and the guilt he carries pushes him to cling to anything that still carries Sirius's essence. But in the movie, there is no such foundation, there is no legacy to draw upon. The blue eye might as well be divine intervention, appearing suddenly, solving a problem and vanishing again without explanation. For a story so intricately built on relationships, sacrifice and trust, this narrative shortcut is not just lazy, it's harmful. The absence also distorts the character of Aberforth. In the book, he is not merely a tool for escape, he is a complex, skeptical man who doubts his brother and questions Harry's mission. His appearance is not convenient, it is hard-earned. "You don't strike me as a fool, Potter," Aberforth says, "so I might have hoped you'd have more sense than to break into a wizarding household, full of Death Eaters in broad daylight." Their encounter is sharp, charged with history and hidden wounds. It adds flavour to the Dumbledore family dynamic and gives Aberforth a chance to grow beyond his status as a background character. In the film, he appears almost out of nowhere, a gruff man who provides shelter but without any emotional resonance. To understand the damage of this omission, one must consider what is lost. The mirror is not just a plot device, it is a tether between the living and the dead. It is Sirius's voice beyond the grave. It is a lifeline that Harry neglected and then rediscovered. It speaks to his growth. The boy who once refused to use it out of pride or confusion now clings to it in his darkest moments. This is character development. This is storytelling. The movie, in failing to show the mirror's origin, cheapens its power and turns a powerful redemption arc into a throwaway prop. One could argue that time constraints or pacing influenced this choice, but other, far less meaningful scenes made the cut. The wedding, the chase in the woods, even the vision of Grindelwald's theft of the Elder Wand, all were deemed worthy of screen time. Why not the mirror? Why not a single moment in Grimmauld Place where Harry finds it, or a flashback to Sirius handing it over? It would have taken mere seconds and offered so much. Number 16. The development of Lupin and Tonks' relationship was skipped. Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks could have been the heart of a story already brimming with emotional complexities, but in the cinematic adaptation of Harry Potter, they were reduced to a footnote. The books gave them a deep and painful arc, a quiet tragedy wrapped in tenderness and sacrifice, but the films, moving at the pace of visual necessity, offered the audience only the briefest whisper of what should have been a thunderous storm of feeling. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Tonks's love for Lupin is no longer a hidden ache, it's a visible fracture. Her Patronus changes from a jackrabbit to a wolf, and it's not subtle. The change is emotional shorthand, one that speaks volumes in the magical world. It is love, devotion, and longing given form. "The new Patronus was a four-legged creature," says Snape with disdain. "It looks like a wolf." But this line, poignant in the book, disappears completely in the film, where visual clarity doesn't bother to show the Patronus, and metaphor is cast aside like excess baggage. Tonks, introduced in Order of the Phoenix as quirky and effervescent, loses that very spark in the 6th book. Her hair, once a bright chameleonic emblem of her personality, becomes dull and mouse-brown, not because she is losing magic, but because she is losing hope. She is in love with a man who fears he is too broken to love her back. Lupin's resistance is not coldness. It is fear, guilt, and self-hatred born of years living as a werewolf. "I'm too old for you, too poor, too dangerous," he tells her. Yet even this complex refusal, wrapped in pain and love, is absent from the film. In the novels, J.K. Rowling does not rush their romance. It unfolds in the shadows of war. Their love is not born in peace, but in the trenches of resistance. In The Half-Blood Prince, during a pivotal moment at Dumbledore's funeral, Tonks breaks. She stops caring who sees. Her grief for Dumbledore is tangled with the grief of a love unreturned. "You see," she says to Lupin in the books, "she still wants to marry him, even though he's been bitten. She doesn't care." It is Molly Weasley she addresses, comparing their love to Bill and Fleur's, but her eyes are on Remus. Every word is a plea, a rebellion against his self-imposed exile from happiness. That funeral scene never made it to the screen, and so in the films we lose the emotional arc. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, Tonks merely refers to Lupin as "my husband," and then, almost in passing, mentions she is pregnant. No background, no confession, no resistance, no redemption. It is as if a page had been torn out and never replaced. For viewers unfamiliar with the books, their love is a curious afterthought, a relationship that bloomed somewhere offstage. But for readers, it was a battle, not against each other, but against fear, prejudice, and the looming spectre of death. When Lupin does finally surrender to love, it is not a simple act. In the books, it comes after tragedy, after acceptance, and after real emotional labor. He joins the Weasleys at the Burrow, still wary but allowing himself the smallest slice of happiness. It is Tonks who carries the emotional burden, who fights for him, who believes he is worthy of love even when he does not. Rowling writes their reconciliation not with fireworks but with quiet understanding. It is soft, it is steady, and it is real. Their son, Teddy Lupin, is more than just a child. He is a symbol. He is the future that Remus thought was never meant for him. Born into war yet made from hope, Teddy's very existence is a testament to resilience. Remus, who had spent a life believing himself unworthy of a family, suddenly has one, and it terrifies him. In Deathly Hallows, he tries to run again. He offers to join Harry, Ron, and Hermione in their mission to destroy Horcruxes, fleeing his wife, an unborn child, out of fear that he has condemned them both. Harry, who now understands more about love and loss than most grown men, lashes out. Parents shouldn't leave their kids unless they've got to, Harry tells him, and it hits Remus like a curse. Rowling does not let her characters escape accountability. Remus returns to Tonks, ashamed but changed. He chooses his family not because it is easy, but because it is right. This is growth. This is storytelling. The films, tragically, skip this entirely. When the Battle of Hogwarts begins, Lupin and Tonks arrive separately. In the books, they both fight side by side and die off page, leaving readers to discover their bodies lying hand in hand. Rowling, in a choice that has long haunted fans, does not describe their final moments. Instead, she describes the aftermath. Lupin, his eyes open in surprise, Tonks, her hair vivid again. They die not as soldiers, but as people caught in the wave of war. Their deaths are not cinematic, they are cruel, sudden and unfair, and that is precisely why they matter. In the films, their deaths are a footnote. There is no scene showing them fighting, no farewell, no hint of their bond. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, we see their bodies for a fleeting second, lying side by side. No names are spoken, no tears are shed. Tonks never got to hold her child. Remus never got to see his son's eyes change colour. Viewers unfamiliar with the books could be forgiven for asking, who are they, and why should we care? We should care because they were one of the most human couples in a world of magic. Their love story was not born of teenage infatuation or cinematic chemistry. It was earned through pain, patience, and belief. Remus, whose childhood was marred by a bite and a curse, whose adult life was a sequence of rented rooms and half-lived years, finally had something of his own. Tonks, vibrant and bold, who loved fiercely and without apology, fought for him even when he would not fight for himself. Their arc is rich with narrative weight. It echoes with themes of self-worth, disability, acceptance, and love in times of war. Remus represents those society deems unworthy. Tonks is the defiant answer to that injustice. Their relationship is not perfect. It is messy, complicated, and full of fear. And that is what makes it real. That is what makes their loss sting. The films failed them. They failed to show the quiet moments, the small smiles, the trembling hands, the sacrifices. They failed to show Tonks grieving a man who would not allow himself to be loved. They failed to show Lupin terrified of ruining someone's life simply by being in it. They failed to show the redemption that comes when love is finally accepted. And in doing so, they failed the audience. It's a missed opportunity. In a saga filled with grand duels and chosen ones, Remus and Tonks offered something else, a reminder that love is not always loud. Sometimes it is found in a steady voice, a shared mission, a hand reaching through the dark. It deserved more than a single line of dialogue and a blink and you'll miss it funeral scene. There was a time when Tonks was willing to fight the world to be with Remus. A time when she defied her family's expectations, the Order's worries, and Lupin's rejections. A time when her love was not returned, yet she stayed. That stubborn hope, the refusal to give up on someone so convinced he was unlovable, is what made her more than just comic relief with pink hair. It made her a heroine. And Remus, who spent his life convinced that he would die alone, finally allowed himself to believe otherwise. That was his victory. Not just surviving battles or teaching defense against the dark arts, but letting someone in. That was the final transformation, not from man to wolf, but from exile to husband, from loner to father, and then tragically to memory. We are told that Teddy Lupin grows up happy, that he is raised by his grandmother, visits the Potters often, and has his parents' kindness in his veins. But how much more poignant that ending would feel if the films had shown us what he lost. If we had seen the quiet war Tonks fought to be with Remus. If we had seen the moment Lupin realized he could be more than his curse. The books gave us that love story. The films gave us a line. "Have you seen Remus?" Tonks asks during the final battle. It is the last thing she says. Then she is gone. No context, no conclusion, just another casualty in a war whose emotional weight was never fully carried to the screen. And so we return to the books to remember them. To remember how Tonks's Patronus changed. To remember how Lupin flinched at the idea of being loved. To remember that their child was born of courage, not convenience. To remember the cost of war is not just the fall of heroes, but the silencing of their stories. They were not just background characters. They were not just names on a list. They were love, hope, fear, and change, wrapped in two mismatched souls who found something whole together, if only for a little while. The films may have missed it, but the readers never will. Number 17, the conflict between Harry and Scrimgeour was omitted. The sun was barely beginning to rise when Rufus Scrimgeour arrived at the Burrow. He did not come as a guest, though he cloaked his intentions behind the guise of diplomacy. He came with polished boots that left no mark on the kitchen floor, with a lion's mane of hair that had clearly been groomed for effect, and with a tone that suggested power wrapped in velvet. The new Minister for Magic had inherited a war, and with it the desperate hope of salvaging public faith. He needed a hero, and he came for Harry Potter. Scrimgeour's request was simple, at least on the surface. He didn't ask Harry to fight. He didn't ask for spells or duels or strategies. What he asked for was far more invasive. He wanted Harry's name, his image, his symbolism. He wanted the boy who lived to appear alongside the ministry, to shake hands, to smile before reporters, to suggest, no, to lie, that the ministry and the chosen one stood as one. It was not a request born from trust, but from utility. In that moment, Scrimgeour did not see a 17-year-old boy who had buried too many friends. He saw a brand. Harry's refusal came without hesitation. There was no weighing of options, no tortured moral debate. He knew what it meant. He knew what the ministry had become under Cornelius Fudge, how it had covered Voldemort's return with ink-stained lies. And he had watched as Dumbledore's name was dragged through the mud, as Hagrid's past was weaponized against him, as truth was treated as sedition. "I don't want to be used," Harry said, his voice sharp with something that sounded too old for his years. "I don't want to be a poster boy." This moment, though brief in the book Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, was a turning point. It was not just a political rejection, it was a declaration of independence. For the first time, Harry did not act under Dumbledore's instructions or the Order's planning. He stood as himself with a clear and unwavering sense of principle. It was the rejection of a system that had failed to protect the innocent, failed to acknowledge reality, and now sought to whitewash its sins behind the face of a child. Scrimgeour was not the villain. He was something more dangerous, a well-intentioned opportunist, a man who believed in institutions even as they decayed, who believed that public morale was more urgent than private justice. The ministry remained strong, he had declared upon taking office. But strength without truth was a shell, and Harry knew it. He saw through the practiced smiles and the desperate press releases. He refused to be part of a lie. This scene, so rich in moral texture and political tension, was completely excised from the film adaptations. Scrimgeour appears only briefly in Deathly Hallows, Part 1, and even then he is a shadow of the force he was in the books. There is no visit to the Burrow, no ideological standoff, no chance for Harry to define himself against the machinery of power. A critical piece of his evolution, his transition from a follower of adult authority to an autonomous moral agent, is simply gone. The absence is not merely a missed opportunity for drama, it robs the narrative of its ideological core. Harry's journey is not just about defeating Voldemort, it is about resisting control, whether from a Dark Lord or from a bureaucratic institution. His battle is not only against evil, but against the misuse of influence. By rejecting Scrimgeour, Harry is rejecting propaganda, manipulation, and the exploitation of symbols. He is rejecting the idea that appearances matter more than actions. Scrimgeour's proposition had a veneer of nobility. He wanted to maintain hope. He wanted to galvanize a terrified public. He argued in essence that Harry had a duty to inspire others, to lend his reputation for the greater good. But Harry had seen how easily such reasoning could be twisted. He had seen how the Ministry turned on Muggle-borns, how it scapegoated innocent people. He had no faith left in institutions that asked for his face but not his voice. Dumbledore had once told Harry, "The truth is a beautiful and terrible thing and should therefore be treated with great caution." Scrimgeour believed the opposite. He believed that truth could wait, that unity could be forged on illusions. But Harry had learned from Sirius, from Cedric, from his own pain, that truth was not optional. It was everything, even if it cost public approval, even if it made him a pariah. That is what made him dangerous, not his power, but his unwillingness to be controlled. In that kitchen of the Burrow, surrounded by the clatter of teacups and Molly's anxious glances, Harry drew a line. It was quiet, but absolute. He would fight Voldemort, but not at the cost of integrity, not on the Ministry's leash. And in doing so, he became something far more powerful than the Chosen One. He became his own person. The films chose spectacle over substance. They gave us the action, the battles, the spells that split the sky. But they stripped away the moral scaffolding. Without Scrimgeour, there is no contrast between Harry and the Ministry. There is no moment where he turns away from the adult world and says, not with arrogance, but with clarity, "You failed, and I will not be part of your theatre." This omission has consequences. It blurs the boundaries between right and wrong. It reduces the story to a binary struggle of good versus evil, ignoring the murky spaces where compromise breeds corruption. Scrimgeour was not evil, but he was willing to use Harry for a cause that had stopped being noble. And Harry's refusal was not rebellion, it was discernment. The books understand this, the films do not. When Scrimgeour returns in Deathly Hallows, he brings with him Dumbledore's will, and his interactions with the trio are tense and suspicious. He questions Harry's loyalty, delays the delivery of key items, and dies off-page. But his earlier encounter with Harry, where the boy refuses to be paraded like a savior, gives that later tension its weight. It shows us why Scrimgeour is wary, why Harry is mistrustful. It adds layers to their final exchange. Without that earlier scene, we are left with shadows instead of depth. In a world at war, symbols become weapons. Scrimgeour understood that. So did Voldemort, and so did Harry. The difference was how they used them. Voldemort used fear. Scrimgeour used hope, but unearned. And Harry, by refusing to be used, protected the very hope Scrimgeour sought to harness. He knew that authenticity mattered, that being a symbol without belief was worse than being silent. This is not just character development, it is political commentary. Rowling presents a ministry that mirrors real-world governments under pressure, those that trade in narratives instead of solutions, that chase unity through censorship and icons. Scrimgeour is the face of this trend. He is the man who believes that control equals victory. And Harry, barely 17, dismantles that illusion with a single refusal. The power of that scene lies in its quiet rage. There are no raised voices, no dramatic gestures, just a boy who has buried his godfather and seen through every lie the world has told him. A boy who knows that being a hero is not about smiling for cameras. It is about saying no when it would be easier to say yes. Even Lupin, who respected Scrimgeour more than Fudge, never trusted the Ministry. "They're using you, Harry," he once warned. "They always will." And Harry remembered. Not because he distrusted authority by nature, but because he had earned that mistrust through experience, through scars, through loss. When Scrimgeour left the Burrow that day, he left without his prize. Harry did not give him the image he craved. He gave him defiance, and that defiance shaped everything that followed. It shaped how Harry dealt with the Hallows, how he chose not to become another Dumbledore, how he refused power even when it lay in his hands. It began with a simple choice, not to be a puppet. The tragedy is that the audience of the films never sees this transformation. They see a brave boy who fights evil, but they do not see the boy who refuses to be turned into a mascot. They see action, but not autonomy. And so a vital message is lost, not just about Harry, but about all of us who live in a world of symbols, politics, and propaganda. The omission of the Scrimgeour conflict is not just a missing scene, it is a missing mirror. One that reflects Harry's values and challenges our own. One that asks what it means to stand alone, not because you want to, but because it is right. And in that mirror, Harry is not just a boy, he is a lesson. Number 18, Harry repairing Draco's wand, an important moment that was left out. In the dim silence that follows the final duel, the ruins of Hogwarts lie still. Dust floats in the morning light, and the air carries a strange calm after the storm. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, the master of death, stands with two wands in hand, his own holly and phoenix feather wand, broken during the escape from Malfoy Manor, and the Elder Wand, snatched from Voldemort's grasp in the battle's final breath. In the book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, this moment becomes one of quiet restoration. In the film, it is discarded like a prop. Yet this subtle choice to repair his original wand before returning the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb is a deeply symbolic act of identity, humility, and closure. It is a moment that the movies never gave us, and one we deserved. Harry's holly wand is not just an object of magic, it is an extension of his very self, the first truly magical thing he ever owned. Ollivander, the wandmaker, described it as a rare combination. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. This wand chose Harry not because he was the boy who lived, but because of what resided inside him, a capacity for love and courage, as well as a shared twin core with Voldemort. That shared core was always a paradox. The wand that fought Voldemort contained a feather from the same phoenix that gave Voldemort's wand its power. And yet it was this paradox that made the wand uniquely Harry's. When it broke, it wasn't just a loss of utility. It was a fracture of identity. During the height of the Second Wizarding War, Harry uses Draco Malfoy's Hawthorn wand. Taken during their escape, it's a functional replacement but lacks harmony. In the book, it's even described as working surprisingly well, a detail that should disturb more than comfort. The reason it works at all is not technical, it's because Harry becomes its new master. After disarming Draco at Malfoy Manor, he unknowingly gains the allegiance of the Elder Wand as well, but still the Hawthorn wand is not his own. It is a borrowed skin, a temporary identity during a time of urgency. After Voldemort's defeat, Harry has the Elder Wand, the wand of destiny, death, and legacy. Its history is blood-stained. Antioch Peverell, Gellert Grindelwald, Albus Dumbledore, Draco Malfoy, and finally, Harry himself. To possess it is to be at the center of wizarding history. But Harry makes a different choice. He does not keep it. He uses it briefly to perform one spell, Reparo, on his own holly wand. The moment is brief in the text. Harry took the Elder Wand and he used it to repair his own wand, and he knew it at once. It had worked. It was whole again. This act is the true ending of Harry's arc, not the death of Voldemort, not the epilogue 19 years later, but this choice to return to who he is. The film adaptation reduces this complex and meaningful act to a single visual, Harry snapping the Elder Wand in half and throwing it into the chasm outside Hogwarts. It's dramatic, visually symbolic, but symbolically hollow. It makes Harry look reckless, even irresponsible. In the book, he understands that to destroy the wand would be to destroy a part of magical history. He doesn't want to erase the past. He wants to step out of it. He doesn't keep the wand, but he doesn't destroy it either. He returns it to Dumbledore's tomb with respect. The decision is layered with maturity. Fixing his wand is not about nostalgia. It is about autonomy. Throughout the series, Harry is guided, manipulated, and pushed by forces larger than himself, prophecies, legacies, bloodlines. For the first time, this act is his own. No prophecy dictates it, no mentor suggests it, no friend assists him. He chooses to restore what he had lost on his own terms. The spell he uses is not a weapon, but a healing charm. The wand he restores is not ancient or legendary, but personal. The act is quiet, but monumental. It is also a rejection of power. The Elder Wand represents domination. Its allegiance shifts through conquest. To use it, one must accept its rules, power through defeat. By using it only once, and for restoration, Harry breaks the cycle. He does not use it for fame, revenge, or control. He does not test its limits. He refuses the temptation that others, Grindelwald, Dumbledore, even Voldemort, could not resist. That choice is a declaration. Harry Potter is not the master of death because he owns the wand. He is the master of death because he no longer fears what it represents. Draco Malfoy, whose hawthorn wand Harry used, is a crucial, often overlooked figure in this story. It is his disarming at Malfoy Manor that shifts the loyalty of the Elder Wand. In this way, Draco becomes an accidental player in Voldemort's downfall. Harry's refusal to humiliate or harm Draco further at Hogwarts is part of the same moral trajectory. Draco's wand served Harry temporarily, but the final act is not to keep it or honor it. It is to return to his own. This speaks to the idea that borrowed power is not true power. Only by reclaiming what was always his can Harry complete his journey. Throughout the books, wands are treated not merely as tools, but as sentient extensions of the wizard's soul. In The Goblet of Fire, we learn from Mr. Ollivander. The wand chooses the wizard, remember? I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. This connection is spiritual. Breaking one's wand is like breaking a mirror of the self. Restoring it is a resurrection. It's not just functionality, it's symbolic rebirth. Moreover, the act is rooted in lore. In the tales of Beedle the Bard, the Elder Wand is the most dangerous of the Deathly Hallows. Its bearers die violently. Antioch Peverell is murdered in his sleep. Grindelwald is imprisoned. Dumbledore is cursed. Voldemort is destroyed. Harry sidesteps this fate by releasing the wand, not destroying it, not exploiting it, but returning it to its resting place intact and unclaimed. This is the true mastery over death. Peace without violence, power without domination. The film's decision to have Harry destroy the wand might have made sense cinematically. It's a visual finality, but it ignores the central idea of repair and redemption. The very title of the final book is The Deathly Hallows, and yet the films treat them as footnotes. The resurrection stone is dropped without ceremony. The invisibility cloak is barely referenced, and the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in existence, is snapped like a twig. There is no ritual, no respect, no meaning. Imagine instead if the scene had been filmed as written, Harry walking slowly through the ruins, wand in hand, whispering, "Reparo!" A golden light emerging from the Elder Wand, knitting together the broken holly wand, a warm hum of magic in the silence. His expression soft, filled with gratitude. Then wrapping the Elder Wand in cloth, walking to Dumbledore's tomb, sliding it beside his teacher's still hands. A gesture of reverence, not rejection. That would have said something. It is a scene that parallels Harry's entire journey. In the Philosopher's Stone, he is a boy who chooses not to seek greatness but to protect his friends. In the Chamber of Secrets, he refuses to betray Hagrid or Dumbledore. In the Goblet of Fire, he saves Cedric's body. In the Half-Blood Prince, he does not seek vengeance. And finally, in the Deathly Hallows, he walks willingly into death. Every step of his journey is about rejecting the easy path. Destroying the Elder Wand would have been easy. Restoring his old wand and walking away from power, that was the final act of who he really was. The Holly Wand repaired is more than a piece of wood. It is the culmination of his story. It carries his history, his first spell, his Patronus, his fights, his triumphs. He doesn't need the Elder Wand to be powerful. He needs his own wand to be whole. And in that there is more power than the Elder Wand ever offered. It is not a wand of death, but of life. This moment, though small on the page, is the final line in the character arc of Harry Potter. It is the answer to every question the series asked. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you choose when you have every choice? Do you become the thing you fought against? Or do you return quietly to your roots? Harry Potter does not become a hero by defeating Voldemort. He becomes one by refusing to become another Voldemort. The repaired wand is the proof. That single act, the flick of Reparo, the humming reunion of wand and wizard, says everything the series ever needed to say. Number 19, Ariana Dumbledore's tragedy was not revealed. The fire that devoured the Dumbledore family house in Godric's Hollow left no ashes behind, only silence, secrets, and guilt that would echo through the soul of one of the most powerful wizards of all time. Ariana Dumbledore, the youngest and most fragile thread in the Dumbledore tapestry, is but a whisper in the books and barely a ghost in the films. Yet she is the bleeding heart of Albus Dumbledore's story. Her tragedy is not just a moment of pain, it is a slow, unbearable unraveling. And in that unraveling, we find the very soul of the man who would one day hold the Elder Wand. Ariana was only 6 years old when the unthinkable happened. 3 Muggle boys, seeing her perform accidental magic, attacked her viciously, out of fear, out of ignorance, out of cruelty. It was not just a physical assault. They shattered something inside her. As Aberforth later recalls, it destroyed her. What they did, the trauma left Ariana broken, not in body, but in mind. Her magic, no longer something she could control, turned inward and volatile. She became a danger to herself and others, not because she was evil, but because she was wounded in ways too deep for healing. Kendra Dumbledore, her mother, took Ariana away from the world. They lived in silence, isolation, and secrecy. Kendra was terrified that the magical authorities would see Ariana as a threat and lock her away in St. Mungo's, an institution for the incurable, where forgotten witches and wizards spent their lives behind enchanted barriers. So Ariana remained hidden, a secret shame and a sacred treasure, all at once. And for a time, that worked, until it didn't. Ariana's magic had no boundaries. It pulsed with her emotions, wild and unpredictable. And one day, it killed her mother. There are no dramatic scenes here, no malicious intent, only an explosion of power in a moment of distress, and Kendra was gone, just like that. Ariana, barely a teenager, had now claimed the life of the one person who had fought hardest to protect her. The grief this caused was not hers alone. It etched itself into the skin of her older brothers, Albus and Aberforth, in very different ways. When Kendra died, Albus was forced to return home from Hogwarts, where he had just graduated with accolades and high hopes. He had been ambitious, brilliant, destined for glory. But suddenly he was a caretaker. At just 18, his life's path veered sharply away from the grandeur of academia and into the shadows of domestic duty. Bitterness festered. In Ariana, he didn't see a sister to be nurtured. He saw a burden to be borne. It's a harsh truth, but it's one Albus himself later confesses. I resented it, I admit it, I was gifted, I was brilliant, I wanted to shine, I wanted glory. That resentment would be the chink in his armor, and Gellert Grindelwald knew exactly where to strike. Grindelwald came to Godric's Hollow not with violence, but with vision. He was young, charismatic, and intoxicating. He and Albus became fast friends, bound by intellect and ideology. They dreamed of a new world, one in which the magical elite would guide the Muggles for the greater good. And they planned and plotted and ignored the small, trembling girl in the upstairs room. Ariana became an afterthought, a complication, a footnote to be managed later. Aberforth, the ever-watchful younger brother, would not allow it. He returned from school and immediately saw through the fog of grandeur that clouded Albus's mind. He accused Grindelwald of manipulating his brother and abandoning Ariana. The confrontation was not verbal. It was fire and fury, wands and wrath. The three boys, Grindelwald, Albus, Aberforth, duelled in the same house where so much pain had already taken root. In the chaos, Ariana tried to intervene. She wanted to help, perhaps to stop the fighting, perhaps only to scream. But her magic surged uncontrolled. A flash, a sound, a silence. When it was over, Ariana was dead. No one knew whose spell had killed her. Grindelwald fled, abandoning the Dumbledore brothers and leaving a trail of shattered ideals in his wake. Aberforth blamed Albus, and Albus blamed himself. Not just for the death, but for everything: the attack by the Muggles, the isolation, the loss of Kendra, and the final, fatal blast. Her life was a house of cards, and each card bore Albus's name. This is the core of Dumbledore's sorrow, the origin of his humility and restraint. In the Deathly Hallows, he says to Harry, "I was not to be trusted with power. It is not a metaphor, it is memory." Albus Dumbledore, the man who turned down the post of Minister for Magic multiple times, did so not from political disinterest, but from deep, festering guilt. He knew what power had made him do. He knew what power had cost his sister, and he feared what else it might still cost. But in the films, this heartbreak is condensed to a vague remark, a portrait, a fleeting mention. The viewer is not allowed to feel Ariana's presence, nor understand her absence. She becomes a footnote again, reduced to a symbol rather than a story. It is a disservice both to her and to the audience, who never truly see the rawness behind Dumbledore's wisdom. J.K. Rowling, however, gave us glimpses of that pain in the books, particularly in Aberforth's confrontation with Harry in the Deathly Hallows. Aberforth is blunt and furious. He tells Harry about Ariana, about her suffering, about Albus's neglect. He read Grindelwald's papers, and he thought himself clever enough to rule the world. I told him he was wrong, but he wouldn't listen. These words pierce more deeply than any spell. They expose the human behind the legend, the shame behind the spectacles. Ariana's magic is never defined. Some readers have speculated that she was an obscurial, a witch whose repressed magic turns into a destructive parasitic force. The theory gained traction after the Fantastic Beasts films introduced the concept. But whether she was an obscurial or not, the truth remains: she was a victim, not of her own power, but of a world that didn't know how to love or protect her. And that truth haunts her brother until the end. When Harry stands with Dumbledore in the strange liminal space of King's Cross Station after being struck by Voldemort's curse, Dumbledore speaks openly for the first time. "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love." This is not just a philosophical musing. It is the confession of a man who lived without Ariana's love for most of his life, because he failed to earn it, and then failed to save it. The tragedy of Ariana is not merely her death, it is the way her pain was hidden, ignored, and ultimately weaponized. It is the way her magic was feared rather than understood, and it is the way her story was buried under layers of politics, ambition, and denial. In many ways, she is the mirror opposite of Harry. Where Harry was nurtured into his magic, Ariana was wounded by hers. Where Harry had mentors, Ariana had silence. Where Harry's pain gave him purpose, Ariana's gave her oblivion. One can argue that Dumbledore's every decision, his guidance of Harry, his withholding of information, his calculated grooming of a boy to become a weapon can all be traced back to Ariana. He knew what happened when love was not protected. He knew what happened when power went unchecked. He knew what happened when you chose the greater good over the personal truth. And he tried, clumsily and painfully, to do better. But the past, like magic, does not let go so easily. When the final battle at Hogwarts is done, when Dumbledore lies cold in his tomb, and when the truth comes spilling out through memories and portraits, the ghost of Ariana still lingers. Her photograph in Aberforth's bar watches silently, a reminder of all that could not be fixed. There is no spell to undo her fate, no wand movement to bring her back. And that is perhaps the greatest magic in Rowling's world, the unfixable wound, the spell that cannot be cast. Ariana Dumbledore deserved a story, not a line, not a passing glance, a story of pain, yes, but also of innocence, of sacrifice, of love unspoken and unforgiven. Her tragedy is not just Albus's, it is ours, because in forgetting her, we forget what made Dumbledore human. Number 20, Percy Weasley's return was not shown. Of all the omissions made by the Harry Potter films, few are as emotionally hollow as the absence of Percy Weasley's redemption arc. The books craft it with quiet power, slow-building tension, and finally, a devastating payoff during the Battle of Hogwarts. Percy's return to his family isn't just a footnote, it is one of the most human, painful, and redemptive storylines in the final book. And yet, in the films, it is reduced to a blink-and-you-miss-it background detail. There are no words, no tension, no tears. Only a ghost of the character appears in the chaos of war, stripped of his story, his shame, and his growth. Percy Ignatius Weasley had always been the polished one, the rule-follower, the prefect, the career-driven sibling who believed in the power and prestige of the Ministry of Magic. Even when the Ministry began slipping into darkness, Percy stood by it. In Order of the Phoenix, the rupture becomes painfully real. Percy's really fallen out with Dad, Ron tells Harry. He says Dad's an idiot for standing up to the Ministry. Percy leaves home, severs contact, and aligns himself with those who seek to control and distort truth. For the next 2 books, he is absent, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, morally. His silence becomes a wound that no one dares to touch. For Molly Weasley, the absence of her 3rd son is unbearable. The maternal warmth that defines her character is never complete with Percy gone. She sends him a Christmas jumper each year, even when he doesn't reply. Arthur speaks with quiet sorrow of his son, trying not to let anger and disappointment sour the memory of the boy he raised. And Fred and George? Their mockery hides something deeper. Percy is a sore spot for all of them, a visible scar on the family's unity, and yet they wait, they hope. Then comes Deathly Hallows, the darkest of all the books. War is not theoretical anymore. It is real, and it is bleeding into every home and every heart. When Percy arrives at the Battle of Hogwarts, it's not with a grand entrance. It's a single gut-punch line in Chapter 31. And then a streak of light flew through the air and missed Harry by inches. He turned and saw Percy Weasley running toward them, his wand releasing jets of light at the oncoming Death Eaters and yelling. He is not coming for forgiveness. He is coming to fight, to stand where he should have stood all along. What follows is one of the most beautiful, tragic, and utterly raw moments in the entire series. Percy, breathless, throws himself into the heat of battle. "Did I hear that correctly?" says Fred. "Percy?" There's a beat. "You're joking, Perce." And then comes the moment. A smile, a laugh, a sliver of healing in the middle of war. But the book, with the cruelty of real life, offers no time for comfort. And then a deafening explosion. Fred's body was spread eagle, pale and still, a gaping hole where the wall had blasted apart. The line between redemption and grief collapses in that instant. This is how J.K. Rowling builds her emotional world, layer by layer, flaw by flaw, and finally by cracking it open when the reader least expects it. Percy falls to his knees beside Fred's body, screaming as he clutched at his brother, a man devastated not only by death, but by the years of silence that came before it. That is the price of his choices. That is the weight of his return. And for the Weasleys, that moment is both unbearable and necessary. There is no more pretense, no pride, just pain, love, and war. Now consider the film's version. Percy is there, technically, somewhere in the crowd, somewhere among the nameless Order members, but there is no reunion, no moment of recognition, no shout of "You're joking, Percy," no breakdown beside Fred's corpse. He simply exists, a warm body where once a complex, broken, and finally redeemed soul should have stood. And in doing so, the film robs the audience of one of the saga's most profoundly human stories. It's not just that the film skips a few lines of dialogue, it's that it refuses to engage with what those lines mean. Percy's return is not simply about a brother coming home, it is about the ideological poison of blind loyalty, the consequence of pride, and the fragile hope of reconciliation. The war of Harry Potter is not only against Voldemort, it is against the silence between fathers and sons, the bitterness between brothers, the brokenness that fear and ambition can bring. Percy's arc carries all of that. When he throws spells against Death Eaters, he is also throwing down his shame, his years of absence, his complicity. In storytelling, redemption only works if the audience feels the weight of the fall. Percy's betrayal of his family isn't sudden, it festers. And that festering is what makes his return so powerful. The moment he laughs with Fred is a crack in the dam, a flood of everything he's held in. And when Fred dies, that moment is sealed in eternity. It becomes, for Percy, a wound he will never stop carrying. Rowling never overplays the scene. She doesn't need to. The silence after Fred's death is louder than a scream. And Percy's collapse beside him is not just grief, it is guilt. Every Christmas ignored, every owl left unanswered, every moment he convinced himself he was right. In the books, this moment lingers. It's part of Percy's legacy now, and in the aftermath, when the bodies are counted and the war is won, we remember not just the dead, but those who carry the burden of surviving. It would have taken so little to show in the film. A 5-second shot, Percy arriving at the gates of Hogwarts, hesitating, a tear, a shout, a desperate hug, or later, just a frame, Percy clutching Fred's body, broken beyond words. It would have been enough, but nothing is there, no build-up, no release, just absence. And what does that say about how the films treat character growth? It's not just Percy who suffers, other characters are flattened, streamlined, reduced to archetypes, but Percy is the most blatant, because we see his entire arc in the books, from ambition to alienation to regret, and then nothing. The film leaves a hole where his heart should be. There's something profoundly sad about that, because Percy's story is the story of so many. People who choose the wrong side, people who walk away from love out of pride or fear, people who return too late, but still return. His redemption is a reminder that change is possible, even when you think you've gone too far, that even the estranged son can come home, that even in war, healing is possible. The audience deserved to feel that, to witness it, to carry it. Instead, they are left with confusion. Who is that red-haired man in the background? Why is he standing with the Weasleys again? Wasn't he gone? The film offers no answer, no narrative, just a silent shadow. The book's message is unshakable. Families break. People make terrible choices, but love waits. And sometimes love hurts. Percy's breakdown is not only his, it's a mirror for the reader, a chance to ask, whom have I left behind? What would I give to go back? Perhaps the most ironic part is that Percy's arc is not about being a hero. He is not Harry. He is not even Ron. He is just a man who made a mistake and tried to fix it. And that, in a world of dragons and Death Eaters, is more relatable than any spell. Percy Weasley is every brother who let pride speak louder than love, and every man who realized too late that family is worth everything. When Rowling gives him that moment beside Fred, she offers no easy closure. Percy doesn't get to say goodbye, he doesn't get to explain, he just breaks. And it is in that breaking that his redemption is born. Because healing doesn't always come with words. Sometimes it comes in screams, in silence, in a hand clutching a brother who won't open his eyes again. The loss of this moment in the films isn't just a missed opportunity, it's a betrayal of the story's emotional core. The war was not won by wands alone. It was won in small, painful moments of courage, of humility, of coming home. Percy Weasley's return was one of them, and the films forgot to show it. Number 21, Gellert Grindelwald's backstory was missing. In the stormy climax of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, when Harry walks alone through the Forbidden Forest clutching the Resurrection Stone, his mind drifts not only to the inevitability of death, but also to the nature of power. It's in this very book, so fixated on final choices and moral reckonings, that the ghost of a different kind of darkness hovers in the background, Gellert Grindelwald. Not the shrieking menace of Voldemort, not a villain adorned in serpentine fear, but a complex shadow whose story is barely whispered in the cinematic adaptations. And yet, Grindelwald is crucial. He is the mirror to Albus Dumbledore's soul, the ghost in his gilded past, and the key to understanding the quiet torment behind the world's most enigmatic headmaster. In the books, particularly Deathly Hallows, the reader is invited, sometimes unwillingly, into the personal history of Dumbledore. Rita Skeeter's poisonous biography, The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore, plays the role of Pandora's box, unleashing shameful secrets and half-truths that Harry must confront. Among the most damning is the revelation that Dumbledore, in his youth, once dreamed of global wizarding domination. He wasn't planning it alone. At his side was Grindelwald, brilliant and beautiful, whose ideas about the greater good intoxicated the young Albus. This friendship was not just an episode in Dumbledore's life, it was his great fall, his temptation, his crucible. In this relationship, Rowling planted the seeds of Dumbledore's greatest fear, himself. Yet the films largely discard this intricate tapestry. Grindelwald appears as a footnote, a silent prisoner in Deathly Hallows Part 1, robbed of context. His connection to Dumbledore is reduced to a passing name in the Crimes of Grindelwald, but never with the gravity the books lend him. For the uninitiated moviegoer, he is just another dark wizard. But Grindelwald was no copy of Voldemort. He was ideology incarnate. While Voldemort ruled through fear and sought immortality for his ego, Grindelwald offered something more seductive: order, logic, sacrifice. The world would be better, he claimed, if ruled by those who could actually handle power. His revolution wasn't about himself, it was about everyone else. That precisely made him so terrifying. The philosophical underpinning of Grindelwald's crusade for the greater good originated in a bitter summer in Godric's Hollow. After the death of Dumbledore's mother, Albus found himself tethered to a small house and his fragile sister, Ariana, whose magical trauma made her dangerously unstable. When Grindelwald arrived from Durmstrang, a spark ignited. Here was someone who understood him, matched him, challenged him. The two boys fed off each other's intellect and frustration. They pored over the Hallows, spoke of overthrowing the statute of secrecy, and imagined a world where wizards would no longer hide. It wasn't cruelty that motivated Albus then, but righteousness perverted by youth and ambition. As Dumbledore would later admit in Deathly Hallows, I was gifted, I was brilliant, I wanted to escape, I wanted to shine, I wanted glory. The tragedy came not through ideology alone, but blood. When Aberforth Dumbledore confronted the pair, accusing Albus of neglecting Ariana in pursuit of grandeur, a duel broke out. Wands flashed. Ariana died. To this day, Dumbledore never knew whose spell had killed her. That is the weight he carries. It's why he never sought the office of Minister for Magic, why he feared authority, why he trusted no one, not even himself, with unchecked power. He tells Harry, almost brokenly, "Do not pity the dead, Harry. pity the living and, above all, those who live without love. It was not just a line, it was a confession. And Grindelwald was the origin of that lesson. When we finally see Grindelwald again in the books, he is no longer the golden boy with revolutionary fervour. He is an old man imprisoned in Nurmengard, a fortress he once built for his enemies. Voldemort comes seeking the Elder Wand, expecting terror and subservience, but Grindelwald refuses him. "Kill me then," he sneers. "You will not win. You cannot win. That wand will never, ever be yours." In that moment, Grindelwald becomes unexpectedly noble. He protects Dumbledore's tomb. He shows remorse, not redemption, but clarity. This scene, strangely omitted from the films, is vital. It is the only moment Grindelwald rejects the darkness he once embraced, and it elevates him above mere villainy. It confirms the bond between him and Dumbledore, a bond forged not just in love, but also in regret. Without this full arc, Dumbledore himself becomes a flatter character. The films render him wise and whimsical, a kind of magical Gandalf, but miss the crucial depth that Dumbledore was once dangerously close to becoming Voldemort. Grindelwald wasn't his enemy in the way Harry's enemies were. He was a part of Albus himself. The memory of Grindelwald is why Dumbledore gave Harry choices, why he refused to kill, why he delayed his own death. Dumbledore understood that power corrupts because it had once corrupted him. The duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, which took place in 1945, is often referenced as one of the greatest wizarding battles of all time. Yet it remains unseen. Rowling chose never to describe it directly. It is a ghost story, passed down in reverent tones. He defeated the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, says the chocolate frog card, with an air of proud detachment. But in reality, that battle was a funeral. Dumbledore destroyed not only Grindelwald, but also the last piece of his own youthful delusion. It was not a victory, it was an atonement. Without understanding Grindelwald, that battle loses its soul. Even in his absence, Grindelwald haunts the pages of Deathly Hallows. He represents a different kind of darkness, one that tempts, not terrifies. His ideology echoes in the Ministry's later corruption, in Dolores Umbridge's decrees, in the dehumanization of Muggleborns. Grindelwald's vision was not eradicated by his imprisonment. It lingered like radiation after a bomb. His story is not merely a subplot, it is a warning. Without it, Dumbledore's lessons to Harry lose their weight. The films, in reducing Grindelwald to a silent inmate, deny the audience a vital truth, that the most dangerous evil often wears the mask of reason. Even more telling is the role of the Deathly Hallows in this saga. The books reveal that Grindelwald once possessed the Elder Wand. He even carved its symbol into Durmstrang's walls. His obsession with the Hallows was not about power alone, it was about transcendence. He wanted to bend death itself. In that, he was not unlike Voldemort. But while Voldemort fled from death, Grindelwald wanted to use it. They were two sides of the same cursed coin, and Dumbledore, who sought all three Hallows, stood precariously between them. "Does this mean," asks Ron in Deathly Hallows, "he's a Deathly Hallows nut too?" Yes, but unlike the others, Dumbledore saw the truth in the end. The Hallows don't make you master of death, they force you to accept it. The omission of Grindelwald's true role also erases one of the rare moments where Rowling touched on love outside of the conventional romantic arcs. In a letter to fans, she confirmed that Dumbledore's feelings for Grindelwald were romantic, though unrequited. This changes everything. Dumbledore's heartbreak wasn't just ideological, it was personal. He didn't merely lose a comrade, he lost the only person he had ever loved. That love, twisted by betrayal, shaped everything he became. By not including this in the films, the emotional spine of Dumbledore's story is left brittle and hollow. Moreover, Grindelwald's legacy explains why Dumbledore invests so much in Harry. He sees in the boy a version of himself, brave, clever, and terribly susceptible to temptation. Harry's brush with the Hallows, his flirtation with power, echoes Dumbledore's past. That's why the old man orchestrates everything so delicately, why he withholds information, why he arranges his own death. He wants Harry to face the same tests, but pass them where he once failed. Without Grindelwald, this strategy seems manipulative. With Grindelwald, it's an act of redemptive grace. The Fantastic Beasts films attempted to retroactively fill this gap, but they stumbled. The depth and nuance of Grindelwald were replaced with spectacle and muddled timelines. What could have been a Shakespearean tragedy about power and betrayal became a CGI blur. Dumbledore's inner war, the quiet tremor behind his every word, in Deathly Hallows was drowned in exposition. The story that should have been central was buried again. It's tempting to see Voldemort as the ultimate villain of the wizarding world, but Voldemort is straightforward. He is evil, cruel, narcissistic. Grindelwald is something else. He is intelligent, persuasive, charming. He doesn't demand loyalty, he inspires it. That is the horror. His followers didn't fear him, they believed him. In the age of rising authoritarianism and moral compromise, Grindelwald's story feels chillingly relevant. He isn't the monster under the bed, he is the dreamer who becomes a tyrant. And that is far more dangerous. In the end, when Harry approaches Dumbledore in the spectral King's Cross station, the conversation turns not to Horcruxes or prophecies, but to choice. Dumbledore, tearful, says, "Do not tell me now that you have never heard how that girl came to die. I was the one who brought it all into being. This is not about Voldemort. This is about Grindelwald, about Ariana, about ambition unchecked. The story is cyclical. The sins of the past haunt the choices of the present. That is the true architecture of Deathly Hallows, a confrontation with the old ghosts." Without Gellert Grindelwald, there is no full understanding of Albus Dumbledore. Without their shared past, Dumbledore's decisions seem cryptic, even cruel. But with Grindelwald in the frame, every silence, every hesitation, every tear becomes legible. He is not merely a former friend. He is the scar Dumbledore never speaks of, and for that, his story deserves more than a passing mention. It deserves to be told in full, with all its seduction, brilliance, and ruin. Number 22. The Battle of Hogwarts was shortened and oversimplified. It begins with silence. In the book, the calm before the storm is not empty. It's weighted with anticipation, grief, and resolve. Within the walls of Hogwarts, we walk beside Harry as he prepares for the final confrontation, but we're not alone. The castle breathes with life, occupied by a legion of defenders, teachers, students, creatures, and ghosts, every soul willing to stand against Voldemort's army. In the film, this moment is present, but thinner. It lacks the density of character, the crowded tapestry of lives converging on the edge of destruction. What J.K. Rowling carefully constructed as an emotionally rich crescendo, the film renders as a simplified action set-piece. The book's version of the battle is not just about Harry and Voldemort, it is about everyone. We see Minerva McGonagall conjure galloping stone knights with a trembling joy in her voice. "I've always wanted to use that spell." She is not simply a side character wielding a wand, she is the iron spine of Hogwarts, organizing the defense with tactical brilliance and motherly rage. In the movie, she is given a moment of levity and then disappears into the chaos. Her command of the castle, her orchestration of its magical defenses, her critical role in inspiring others to resist, all of this is cut short. She becomes a footnote in her own stronghold. One of the most egregious omissions is the absence of the magical creatures and allies that Rowling brought into the battle. In the book, we witness the arrival of reinforcements that turn the tide of the fight. Centaurs charging from the Forbidden Forest, house elves from the kitchens armed with knives, and even the ghosts of Hogwarts moving with purpose. The film avoids this entirely, ignoring the moment when Kreacher, the once snide house elf, rallies his kind with a bellow of "Fight! Fight! Fight for my master, defender of house elves! Fight the Dark Lord in the name of brave Regulus." This scene is not mere sentiment, it is catharsis, redemption, and the long overdue dignity of a people who had long been dismissed. Another casualty of the adaptation is the death of Fred Weasley. In the book, Fred's death is a gut punch. He dies mid-laugh, a Weasley to the end, in a moment of shared triumph with Percy, who has just rejoined the family and is fighting by his side. And Fred's eyes stared without seeing, the ghost of his last laugh still etched upon his face. Rowling does not hide the cruelty of war. She lets it hit with full force. The reader feels the loss because it is not announced. It happens to us, as it does to the characters. In the film, Fred's death is rendered almost as an afterthought. We see his body, but not the life he loses. There is no time to mourn, no scene of Percy's devastation, no grieving family moment to reflect the weight of what's gone. The film similarly sidelines the deaths of Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks. In the book, their bodies are described as lying side by side, hands outstretched toward each other in death, a tragic image that mirrors their life, their rebellion against fear, and their choice to fight for a future where their son, Teddy, could live free. Rowling gives them a warrior's death, but also the tenderness of love that transcends the battlefield. The film again shows only a glimpse of their bodies, no explanation, no context, no emotion. The viewer is expected to simply accept their absence with no space for farewell. A particularly memorable character whose role is lost entirely is Professor Trelawney. In the book, the often ridiculed divination teacher proves herself in battle. She uses her crystal balls as weapons, hurling them with astonishing force. At one point, she takes down a Death Eater by dropping a crystal ball directly on his head from a gallery above. It's an unexpected, delightful moment that redefines her. She is no longer comic relief, but a warrior in her own eccentric way. The film omits this entirely, erasing the redemption arc of a character often mocked for her oddities. Molly Weasley's duel with Bellatrix Lestrange is one of the few battle moments preserved in the film, and yet even here, the tone is altered. The book presents Molly's fury as maternal, sacred, and grounded in protective instinct. "Not my daughter, you bitch," is not a punchline. It is a primal roar. The battle between them is long, magical, and deadly. Molly fights with a power born from grief and love, and she emerges victorious not just through strength, but because she represents the very thing Bellatrix cannot understand: human connection. The film turns this into a flashy moment, but strips away the complexity, the build-up, and the context that gives it power. In the novel, we see students like Colin Creevey, the mousy boy who once idolized Harry, return to fight even after being told he was too young. He dies in the battle. Dennis, his brother, drags his small body from the wreckage. This is not a heroic death in the traditional sense. It is tragic, unnecessary, and deeply human. The loss of a child in war is a theme Rowling does not shy away from. The film does not include Colin at all. His courage and his fate are written out completely, depriving the audience of one of the most haunting consequences of the final stand. The Giants, too, play a pivotal role in the book. Hagrid tries to calm Grawp amid the chaos, while Death Eaters unleash giants on the defenders. The castle trembles under their feet. There's a sense of scale, of otherworldly danger that adds to the battle's unpredictability. The film includes giants briefly, but again, they are background noise, lacking personality, lacking purpose. There's no moment where we feel Grawp's decision to side with his brother and fight against his kind. Another small story, full of heart, lost in translation. Madam Hooch, the stern and sharp-eyed flying instructor, makes a comeback in the book. After being absent for much of the series, she returns to lead the aerial defense. Her Quidditch expertise becomes crucial as students and teachers engage in airborne duels above the castle. This inclusion brings the school's unique character back into focus. It reminds us that even sports and discipline can become tools of resistance. In the movie, she is never seen. Her return, a symbolic gesture that even forgotten corners of Hogwarts would rise in defense, is deleted. The book also showcases how even the most reluctant characters find their moment of bravery. Professor Slughorn, initially portrayed as self-serving, returns to fight. He brings reinforcements from Hogsmeade and duels Voldemort alongside McGonagall and Kingsley Shacklebolt. This is not just fan service, it is the culmination of Slughorn's arc, his decision to finally stand for what is right. The film ignores this. We see Kingsley, but the trio of defenders facing Voldemort is lost, and so too is the idea that courage can awaken in unlikely places. Neville Longbottom's transformation is partially preserved in the film, but even here much is lost. In the book, Neville becomes a symbol of rebellion. He carries the sword of Gryffindor. He leads the student resistance in Harry's absence. He stands up to Voldemort and then, with a single swing, beheads Nagini. It is a moment of glory, but also a release, the culmination of years of ridicule and quiet endurance. The movie condenses this into a single moment, void of build-up. Neville's leadership is never shown. His defiance, his growth, condensed to a cinematic flourish. One of the emotional high points in the book is the reunion of Percy Weasley with his family. After estrangement and bitterness, he returns, apologizes, and fights bravely beside them. His presence humanizes the Weasleys even further. They are not perfect, but they forgive. Percy's reconciliation and subsequent grief over Fred's death is a devastating emotional arc. The movie mentions Percy only in passing. His redemption, his heartbreak, it never makes it to screen. The final duel between Harry and Voldemort is also significantly altered. In the book, they face each other in the Great Hall, surrounded by witnesses, living proof that Voldemort's ideology has failed. Harry does not use brute force to win. He uses knowledge, love, and truth. He explains the Elder Wand's allegiance, offers Voldemort a chance to show remorse. Voldemort dies a human death, his body falling, unmourned, to the floor. In the movie, they duel alone, flying through the air, merging into a visually abstract sequence. It is cinematic, but empty. The message is lost. The battle becomes spectacle instead of parable. Even the simple moments of humanity between the battles are removed. In the book, we see families clinging to one another in grief. We see the wounded being tended to. We see laughter amid fear, love amid ruin. These moments don't require magic. They require time, care, and space to breathe. The film prioritizes motion over meaning. We move from scene to scene, but rarely do we feel the cost of what's happening. Perhaps most painful is the fact that the book allows us to say goodbye to each character in some way. There's a quiet reckoning at the end. We sit with the fallen, we hear their names, we know their sacrifice. In the film, the battle ends and we are pushed forward to the epilogue. The dead are forgotten in seconds. The weight of war is brushed away in favor of closure. But true closure is not found in a jump forward in time. It is found in grief, in reflection, in remembering. The Battle of Hogwarts is not just an ending, it is a tapestry. Each thread, each voice, each loss contributes to the whole. Rowling wove a final act that honored every corner of the world she built. The film, constrained by time and guided by spectacle, flattened that complexity. What remains is a shadow of the storm, entertaining, perhaps, but the soul, the sacrifice, the sorrow, much of it was left on the page. Number 23, the story of Crabbe, Goyle, and Malfoy in Deathly Hallows was rewritten. The Room of Requirement, that eerie, shifting labyrinth of Hogwarts secrets, saw its final transformation in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. But the scene that unfolded within it diverged dramatically between book and film, marking not just a difference in spectacle, but a deeper fracture in theme. The original story offered more than a fiery climax. It carried a brutal message about the nature of evil. In the book, Vincent Crabbe, an often dismissed brute in Draco Malfoy's shadow, became the unexpected instrument of Voldemort's self-destruction. But in the film, he vanished, literally and metaphorically, replaced by a sleek, silent Blay Zabini. The consequences of that change ripple far beyond casting. They strike at the heart of J.K. Rowling's intended moral architecture. In the novel, the trio's return to Hogwarts brings them to the Room of Hidden Things, a cluttered cavern built by centuries of concealed contraband. They search for Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem, one of Voldemort's remaining Horcruxes, which Harry had glimpsed years earlier in this very room. But their discovery is interrupted by an encounter that fuses tension, danger, and tragic consequence. Draco Malfoy, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle, emerges from the shadows with his own plan. The confrontation isn't simply a battle between good and evil, it's a snapshot of how far each character has come. Malfoy's hands tremble, unsure, Crabbe's face burns with rage, and then recklessness ignites apocalypse. Rowling crafts the scene with painstaking intent. As the boys brawl and spells ricochet through the room's mountains of forgotten treasures, Crabbe casts Fiendfire, a cursed flame that consumes everything in its path, even the caster, if they lack control. Crabbe had lost control of the spell, Rowling writes. The fire was spreading, and unlike ordinary fire, it did not burn. It devoured, roared across the room like a living thing. The flames mutate into beasts, surging and snarling. This isn't just destruction, it's chaos incarnate, and within that inferno, the diadem, the vessel of Voldemort's fractured soul, meets its end. The power of this moment lies in who destroys the Horcrux, not Harry, nor Ron, nor Hermione, but Crabbe, driven by hate and a craving to impress. In an ironic twist of poetic justice, evil swallows itself whole. This detail matters immensely. Harry doesn't defeat all of Voldemort's Horcruxes through bravery alone. Sometimes they fall by the very hands that sought to wield power. Crabbe, in trying to annihilate his enemies, becomes a hand of fate. His death is brutal and undeserved, but not meaningless. It is, as Rowling's moral compass suggests, a lesson. That darkness eventually devours its own. The film adaptation strips this moment bare. Actor Jamie Waylett, who played Crabbe, had been arrested and was not invited back. In his place stood Blaise Zabini, a far more composed, aloof figure and one with little narrative development. With this change, the scene becomes a glossy action sequence, polished and choreographed, but emotionally hollow. It's Goyle who casts the cursed fire now, only to perish as the flames consume the room. Zabini clings to a pile of furniture, expressionless, until Harry rescues him. The raw horror of Crabbe's loss and the mythic weight of his fatal spell are erased. In its film form, the moment seems to scream for visual intensity. The flames snake through the chamber with thrilling fury, and the trio's escape atop a broomstick is cinematic, heart-pounding. But nothing of significance is said about the nature of Fiendfire. The viewers are left to assume it's simply another threat, another obstacle. The fact that this spell can destroy a Horcrux is buried. Even worse, the philosophical underpinning that Voldemort's cruelty has inspired such hatred that his enemies can unwittingly destroy him is absent. It's an opportunity lost. Rowling's original passage carried intentional weight. The diadem was gone, every last trace of it had vanished in the searing heat. The Horcrux was no more. The destruction of the Horcrux in such chaos reinforced a pattern. Evil cannot remain contained. It eventually turns inward, consuming both the innocent and the complicit. It was not a heroic act. It was a narrative punishment. Crabbe dies, but in his death he delivers a blow to the Dark Lord more devastating than he could have imagined. By giving that role to Goyle in the film and sidelining Crabbe entirely, the dynamic changes. Goyle, always the follower, suddenly becomes the architect of disaster, but without a shred of build-up. There's no sense of internal revolt, no dangerous surge of dark power that gets out of hand. There's only a momentary lapse, leading to a generic demise. Even his death barely resonates. The room burns, yes, but nothing of moral significance ignites with it. The shift also diminishes Draco Malfoy's arc. In the book, Malfoy stands frozen, watching his friend die in horror. His silence isn't cowardice, it's paralysis. This is the moment when the war's cost becomes personal. The boy who once swaggered down Hogwarts corridors now stands amid ruin. Malfoy was sobbing, Rowling writes. He hadn't wanted this. It's a turning point, one that haunts him even as he flees. But in the film, with Zabini calmly clinging to furniture and Goyle a mere casualty, Draco's reaction is muted. He looks surprised, perhaps scared. But the grief is gone. The absence of Crabbe also dulls the idea of generational inheritance. Crabbe and Goyle are the sons of Death Eaters, raised on hate, groomed for servitude. Their descent into ruin is as much about upbringing as choice. Crabbe's inability to control fiend fire symbolizes what happens when children are taught only to destroy. It's not just a magical mishap, it's a legacy crumbling under its own weight. Rowling, never one to shy from symbolism, uses Crabbe's demise to show how Voldemort's empire was destined to implode from within. In the movie, that context is discarded. Zabini, who was never shown to have Death Eater lineage, has no stakes in this war. His presence feels accidental, a warm body needed to round out the scene. The visual narrative loses the tragic irony of a soldier of darkness burning down his own battlefield. And the philosophical implication, evil is ultimately unsustainable, is left to smoulder in the ashes of a forgotten script note. Crabbe's destruction of the diadem also served as narrative relief. Up until this point, each Horcrux was destroyed through intense struggle. The Basilisk Fang, the sword of Gryffindor, the fateful confrontation with Nagini. But this Horcrux, the diadem of Ravenclaw, fell by sheer recklessness. Rowling knew the power of such variance. Not every triumph in war is earned through valor. Sometimes it comes through chaos. This randomness speaks to the nature of conflict itself. War doesn't care who delivers the fatal blow, only that someone does. By reassigning the spell to Goyle, the film dilutes that randomness. Goyle is portrayed as dim, yes, but not unstable. His use of fiendfire comes out of nowhere, lacking the sense of inevitable explosion that Crabbe carried. Rowling described Crabbe in earlier books as becoming increasingly dangerous, his hatred rising. Crabbe looked positively murderous, we're told in Half-Blood Prince. That build-up pays off in Deathly Hallows, when his fury finally overflows. Goyle, however, had no such arc. His moment is a script requirement, not a climax. The result is that the film's Room of Requirement scene becomes a breathless detour rather than a turning point. It's exciting, yes, but no more meaningful than any other action scene. The Horcrux is destroyed, but who did it? Why does it matter? No one asks. The room burns, the trio escapes, and the plot marches on, but something vital is missing, the soul of the story. The book version forces readers to confront the cost of war. Crabbe dies screaming, Malfoy weeps, Harry, Ron, and Hermione barely escape. And in the wreckage, the crown of Ravenclaw, once a symbol of wisdom, is reduced to ash. There's tragedy there, irony, and a profound sense that the world they knew is crumbling, room by room, friend by friend. In the film, all of that is replaced by a clever broomstick trick and a shrug of magical fire. Rowling often emphasized that evil is not defeated by heroism alone, but by its own unsustainable nature. The Horcruxes fall not only to the trio's courage, but to the missteps of those who sought power for its own sake. The destruction of the diadem by fiendfire embodies this beautifully. It is not a story of triumph, but of consequence, and by erasing Crabbe's role, the film erases that truth. In omitting Crabbe's fatal act, the movie also avoids showing that evil is ugly, senseless, and often kills its own. Goyle's death is tragic, but lacks the same narrative punch. There's no sense that he was corrupted from within, no indication that his death was the natural end of a descent into darkness. Crabbe's story, in contrast, was always headed toward flame. The fire wasn't just magic, it was metaphor. A boy taught only to destroy would eventually destroy himself. This narrative change is more than a production note. It alters the philosophical core of the story. Rowling built her world on the idea that choices define us. Crabbe chose destruction, the flames chose him, and in doing so they took a piece of Voldemort with them. Without that moment, the story loses a shard of its soul. Number 24, Draco Malfoy's inner conflict in the 6th part, was absent. Of all the characters whose evolution was both subtle and poignant, Draco Malfoy's arc in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince stands as one of the most transformative in the entire series. In the sixth book, Draco is no longer the mocking, sneering boy we met on the Hogwarts Express, nor the arrogant rival who took pleasure in Harry's every misstep. Instead, he becomes something rare and painfully human, a child cracked under pressure, haunted by the impossible expectations of the adult world and breaking slowly under the weight of his own conscience. In the film adaptation, this internal fracture is dimmed into a few somber glances, robbed of the gravity that made Draco's story resonate. Gone is the trembling of his hands, the panic in his breath, the sobs in the bathroom stall. What survives on screen is a husk, beautiful, stylized, brooding, but without the terror that defined his descent. In the book, J.K. Rowling lets us see behind the curtain of Draco's carefully curated bravado. No longer is he the polished heir of a pureblood family, but a boy thrust into the grip of war. Voldemort, cruel in his manipulation, chooses Draco not because he believes in his ability, but as punishment. The mission to kill Dumbledore is a sentence handed down not for Draco's success, but to ensure Lucius Malfoy's failure is felt through his son's suffering. This is not an honor, it is a death trap disguised as a duty. He told me to do it or he'd kill me, Draco finally admits in the tower. But long before that moment, we see the evidence building in his unraveling. The image of Draco crying alone in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom is one of the most emotionally potent moments in the series. Rowling writes, Draco was crying. He was not doing this in any calculated way. His face was wet with tears and he was staring at himself in the mirror. This scene is not about vanity, nor is it a moment of plotting. It is a glimpse into a boy so crushed by the expectations placed upon him that he no longer knows where to turn. He is terrified of failure, of Voldemort, of the possibility that he might actually succeed in killing someone. And this, more than any moment of spellwork or dueling, is what defines his character in Half-Blood Prince. Contrast this with the film. The bathroom scene is present, yes, but it is reduced to a fight, flashes of spells, blood, and a stunned Harry gasping at what he has done. There is no focus on Draco's grief, no tears seen before the confrontation, no haunting sense that this boy is moments away from complete emotional collapse. What the book lays bare with trembling honesty, the film chooses to obscure beneath cinematic silence. Tom Felton's performance carries hints of turmoil. He leans over a sink, he stares at the vanishing cabinet. But without the narrative depth of Rowling's text, viewers are left guessing at his thoughts. Draco's plan with the vanishing cabinet, too, becomes a quiet obsession in the book. He vanishes from classes, he stops mocking Harry, stops surrounding himself with Crabbe and Goyle in the same gloating manner. He isolates himself. Even Professor Snape notices, warning Bellatrix Lestrange, that the boy is ill-equipped for the task set before him. Rowling gives us this slow disintegration in real time. Draco becomes gaunt, loses weight, looks sick. He spends his days in the room of requirement, working on the cabinet like a man possessed, not because he wants to let Death Eaters into Hogwarts, but because he is desperate for another way. He cannot kill, he knows this, but perhaps he can succeed without bloodshed. Perhaps if the cabinet works, he can complete the mission without watching someone die by his wand. These are the stakes, not pride, not house rivalry, but survival. In the film, these layers are thinned into scenes where Draco watches, listens, scowls. The tension exists, but it does not breathe. His illness is never explained. His absence is not emphasized. Without the book's internal world, Draco appears cold, distant, not tortured. We do not hear him threaten Borgin about fixing the cabinet or see him forced to use the Imperious Curse on Madame Rosmerta. We do not feel how morally compromised he becomes in pursuit of a solution. And that is what makes the loss of this conflict so sharp. Draco in the book is not a villain. He is not even an anti-hero. He is a boy who has been forced to lose his innocence at knife point. The Astronomy Tower is the culmination of this tragedy. When Draco finally faces Dumbledore, his wand raised and his heart racing, Rowling freezes the world in a moment of suspended doom. Dumbledore's voice is calm. "Draco, "Draco, you are not a killer." This is the line that shatters the last of Draco's mask. He is crying again. The boy from the bathroom has climbed the tower, and the truth is plain. He cannot do it. He stalls, he trembles. The wand shakes in his hand. He seemed simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. The book tells us, "I've got to do it. He'll kill me," he cries. But the wand never fires. He is frozen by the enormity of the act. In that pause, the entire trajectory of Draco's life shifts. The decision not to kill becomes his quiet rebellion. In the film, this moment is visually stunning. Rain falls, lightning flickers. Draco's hand raises slowly. But the richness of the scene, the monologue, the emotion, the back and forth of pleading and fear, is absent. Instead, the scene belongs more to Dumbledore and Snape, while Draco is reduced to a visual element. There is no clear indication of how close he was to breaking, no true sense of relief when he is interrupted. The viewer cannot grasp just how much this one moment cost him. It feels like plot, not personal crisis. This matters because Draco's arc is not about defiance, it is about paralysis. He is not someone who rises up in revolt. He is someone who is trapped between Voldemort and his family, between the ideology he was raised to believe and the reality of murder, between who he was supposed to be and who he truly is. His greatest act of courage is not violence, but refusal. It is inaction. He does not become a hero in this moment, but he does not become a killer either. That middle ground, the fragile, bleeding center of a frightened teenager, is where his humanity lies. Rowling constructs Draco's fall and fractured redemption with extraordinary care. She does not absolve him of cruelty. He is still the boy who mocked Muggleborns and smirked through others' pain, but she lets us understand where that cruelty came from. We see the fear behind the mask, the way he flinches, the way he watches others die because he cannot stop it, the way he sinks deeper into silence. These are not signs of cowardice. They are marks of trauma. His story, like all stories shaped by war, is one of what it takes from those too young to fight it. The omission of this depth from the film does more than flatten Draco. It robs the viewer of empathy. Without seeing his suffering, we cannot mourn his loss of innocence. Without his breakdown, his silence seems prideful, not pained. His solitude looks like arrogance. His mission appears coldly strategic. But the boy in the book is none of these things. He is exhausted, broken, terrified that he will either die or become something he cannot live with. We must also look at Draco's legacy in the final book to understand why this missing conflict is vital. In Deathly Hallows, he does not become a Death Eater in any meaningful way. He remains passive, withdrawn, shadowed by guilt and dread. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione are captured and taken to Malfoy Manor, Draco does not give them away. He hesitates, he lies. Later, during the Battle of Hogwarts, he does not fight for Voldemort. He searches for self-preservation for his parents. And that small mercy, that resistance to fully embrace the dark, is rooted in the pain he experienced in Half-Blood Prince. If we do not see that pain, his decisions later seem like accidents, not choices. The series thrives on nuance. Characters like Snape, Sirius, and even Dumbledore are given layers upon layers. But Draco, whose arc is defined not by grand action, but internal disintegration, is left underdeveloped in the film. He is not given space to crack. And in doing so, the adaptation makes the mistake of treating him only as a rival, not as a casualty of the same war. It is tempting to dismiss Draco's arc as secondary. After all, he is not the chosen one. He does not destroy Horcruxes or duel Voldemort, but that is precisely why his story matters. He is ordinary, privileged, yes, flawed, but ordinary. And when the cruelty of the magical world comes to claim its price, he is forced to reckon with a task that no child should face. The failure to communicate this journey in the film is not just a creative choice. It is a missed opportunity to show that even those born on the wrong side of a war can be saved by their own fear of becoming monsters. In the final scene of Half-Blood Prince, as Draco lowers his wand and the Death Eaters ascend, the book leaves us with a boy pulled away by his mother, too numb to resist. That numbness, raw, human, hollow, is the beating heart of his transformation. We understand that he is not redeemed, but he is not lost. The film, in its rush to glamorize, does not give us this closure. Draco simply disappears into the shadows, leaving behind not empathy, but questions. To truly understand Draco Malfoy is to witness the quiet agony of someone who was never free to choose. His tears in the bathroom are not weakness, they are the most courageous moment in his life. His failure to cast the killing curse is not cowardice, it is his salvation. And his silent walk away from Dumbledore's corpse is not triumph, but the slow return to a childhood already shattered beyond repair.